going to go over to Peter at the Wildlife Research Training Institute in Naivasha. Peter, the screen is all yours.
Thank you very much. Good evening, everyone. My name is Peter Maina, and I'll be talking to you about the practical case studies that we've been handling at WRTI. So, Wildlife Research and Training Institute is a government institution that is mandated to do wildlife research and also training. So I'll be talking to you about how we secure our habitats within, especially the protected areas, how to enhance productivity, and this is by controlling the invasive plant species as well as their management. Where do we work? We work within all the protected areas in the entire country. The country is around almost 580,000 square kilometers, but we are not restricted to protected areas only, but also where we have wildlife. So you find us working within the private and community conservancies, like where the students are already today, and even involved also in developing of those management plans. And invasive plant species are very key in terms of managing the habitats. So this has been has been said today in terms of the impact of the invasive species which affect landscapes and also ecosystems. And by the fact that they change the ecological structures as well as functioning, then they reduce the habitats, the species diversity, abundance, as well as their productivity, especially the primary productivity, where you note that Kenya, much of it is actually savanna. And within this savanna, we have a huge species diversity, especially for herbivores. And the characteristics of these species is that they are very fast in terms of adapting, and they adapt to persist. They mature and also spread very fast. And they also create a certain environment which is not conducive for the native plant species, therefore trying to displace them. As a result, then our wildlife is affected, especially the herbivores, by the fact that they are not able to get enough of their food, and this has a ripple effect on even human-wildlife conflict, as well as the predators that depend also on these species. One of the study areas that we have worked on is Lake Nakuru National Park. It is found within the Greater Rift Valley. And if you look at the map that we've done, the classification, this is actually based on remote sensing. So we went into the park, picked some classes, the training classes for these invasives. And you see, we have taconanthus, which is a bit green from the screen, and they have actually occupied almost 38%. Okay, they have actually occupied around 38% of the park, and this one, removing what you see as blue or the lake, then means that we have very minimal land for the herbivores. And this park is basically a grassland, apart from what you find on the right, which has got some elevated ground, where we also have now the taconanthus and some grasses. So whatever you find on the lower side, on the southern side, is actually basically the grasslands. And this is where we have Soranum and Ocimum gratissimum and also Ocimum suive. And this actually reduces the productivity of these lands. If you look at the wildlife distribution, the second map, you find that much of the wildlife is actually found within these grasslands or within this ecosystem. However, a slight change in terms of the climatic conditions, if we have some drought conditions, then we have a lot of massive buffaloes, death of buffaloes and other herbivores. And this can be seen in the photo that I've placed there, meaning that invasive species management is not an option for us as managers as well as scientists. It is a collaborative effort that we have to engage, and not just doing management plans. Rather, we need to be proactive and also go get our boots on the ground and do something, especially if we need these ecosystems to survive. So if you go to Tsavo National Park, this is one of our largest park within Kenya. And I'm going to take you through two sites that we did our survey. One is on the left for the Prosopis juriflora that has been talked about by most of my previous speakers, as well as Opuntia stricta, which is found on the southern part of Tsavo East, which we have been able to eradicate. Take you through that. So for Opuntia stricta, the first photo you see there on the left is how it was before the introduction of the cochineal beetle, which has actually been talked by most of my previous speakers. So once we found that this is a good biological method or control, then we propagated these in a greenhouse. And then after propagation, then we took this into the field. And the other photo, which is down on the left, shows the invasion of the beetle on the cactus. And then the map there shows the previous areas which were actually occupied by the invasive species. And we found that it was a success. So how did we do this in terms of trying to assess the success? We downloaded some imageries for Landsat 7, for Landsat 8, sorry, for 2017, and also Sentinel-2 for 2024, and then analyzed the NDVI imageries. You realize that NDVI, which looks at the greenness of vegetation, if you pick it the dry season, Opuntia will always be green. So the value of NDVI will always be tending almost to 1. So how then you are able to isolate it and use other parameters to see the success. This is how we did the assessment. So the photos, or the image on the left is 2027, and the image on the right is 2024. Coincidentally, for the 2 years, respective years, we did wildlife census. And we overlaid this data, and you're able to see in 2017, the NDVI was very high. Was in areas where we have high NDVI, especially the areas which I've circled. You realize that we didn't have wildlife distribution. The wildlife distribution was very scanty, as compared to 2024, where we have the distribution, which is almost even. And the photo on the right shows the status of the invasive species after impact by the cochineal beetle. So this was a success. However, we have to note that you have to do monitoring, because over time there has been some sprouting of the of Opuntia, and these we have to ensure continuous monitoring of this. Otherwise, the last time I went in this place, we found some baboons. They were actually feeding on the fresh, succulent parts of the puntia, and they were actually spreading it. So monitoring is very key for this. But this was actually a success, even for the wildlife distribution. See, we do away with the invasive species, then we are able to impact positively on wildlife distribution. Basically, meaning that the site, the habitat was actually being restored back to its original state. For the Prosopis duriflora, we did a mapping outside and inside the protected area along a certain river, and we realized that the invasion was more along the river, but it was spread because the river was actually flows from outside into the park. Then there was a lot of spread of Prosopis along the riverine from the highest areas of invasion, which is outside the protected area, and getting into the park. And this means that without any intervention, it will actually progressively deposit all those seeds into the park, and this is not a good sign. And you realize that after of the area that was we did the survey, 2.4% was actually invaded by Prosopis. This is not a good sign for managers and for us as scientists. So something needs to be done into it. And you see, the photo on the right shows the invasion around the river valley. And this is a seasonal river. So the seeds actually are dropped onto the river valley, and during flooding, then everything goes into the park. And this again is not a good sign. Again, human activities, sand harvesting outside the protected area was actually spreading this because the sand is picked with the seeds, and then it is actually now spread into different destinations where the sand was actually being taken to. Okay, so again, let's look at what we are doing within our headquarters. Our headquarters is at Naivasha, and we have a sanctuary there. So after mapping, you realize that invasive species occupied almost 45% of the entire area. And this is how we did it. Because we were not able to use the remote sensing in this area, we actually went on the ground and did some delineation of the areas which have been affected by these invasive species, which was a combination of several, including Soranum. We also had Cydia pancurata. We also had we don't have we also had Quibelgia, and that's Opuntia. And this is what we came up with as a way of trying to understand how it was distributed and the control, and also the effort in terms of human effort, and also how do we allocate the resources into this. So we mapped the area. After mapping, then we deployed some human labor to do the removal. And this is how we did it. Every day they removed. First of all, the area is divided into 100 by 100 grids. And every day we were monitoring the area or the number of grids which were removed. And then after that, we weigh the biomass. After that, we let it dry, and you're able to see we put actually we correct everything. When we do the weighing, we put it in one area. When we let it dry, then we collect it. You can see a photo there showing how we collect it. And then after that, we take it to an aggregation site where the last photo, we were able to do the burning. For the Opuntia, you see Opuntia stricta, after weighing, then we dig some holes, and then we bury it completely. After burying, within a period of not more than a month, everything decomposes and that's it. Even for the Quebergia, we have the photo here, which is almost the last one on the left. You bury it, and then it goes. It doesn't actually resurface anymore. However, care has to be taken. During weighing, during transporting to the correction site or where you're going to bury, if you are not careful and then drop a few pieces, then this one might be you are actually spreading the invasive species. So care has to be taken, and as much as you are using human labor, you also have to have do some supervision so that you don't actually spread. And then again, to know the effort is you deploy a certain number of people. Once you do the first deployment of people, you know how many people can do a 100 square 100 by 100 square meter, and for how many days. And then again, you will do your mathematics and know how much resources to allocate for that 100 by 100 square meters and how many people you need. So this is very important for planning. Again, in the same area, now that we've understood, we've known the effort, we've known the resources that we're supposed to handle, to channel into that, then how do we monitor this? So what we did, we came up with some monitoring plots. These are permanent sampling monitoring plots. And one, we clear-felled and fenced out all the invasive, especially the taconanthus. And then we let it generate naturally. The other one was to clear fell and then reseed with some grasses. The other one was just thinning and reseeding and thinning only. Thinning was 70%. We only remove around 70% of the taconanthus, and then we monitor the 4 plots. And actually, this is something that we are doing. And when we did the removal of those invasive species, which I had shown you in the previous slide, this is what we realized. We realized that wildlife now started coming into the areas which were open for 2 reasons. One, for security purposes, for their own security purposes, because the area was open, they could see. Number 2, we had some grasses at least regenerating. However, you realize in this photo that we still have some Solanum incarnum that is coming up. So continuous removal and monitoring is very key while maintaining this data. How many kgs did you remove last time from the plot of 100 by 100? How many people did you spend? How many hours? And then you're able to look at the effort. And then in the preceding one, how many, what is the data for the number of people, the kilograms removed? And if it is not reducing, then something is not right. We might not be doing the right thing. Okay, let's move to the other one. Within Nairobi National Park, this is one of our prestigious national parks in our country. Is the only park within in a town setup, and we were invited by Kenya Wildlife Service to go and do an invasive species assessment. And for this, we used remote sensing, where we went and picked some training samples, and more, it was on Osimum Swive. And this was because it had occupied almost 16 square kilometers of the park. And you realize this is a very big portion. 16 square kilometers of 117 is almost 13.63. So, and the park itself is more of actually a savanna grassland park. So if Osimum takes over, and then means there'll be some impact on the primary productivity, which is available for herbivores, which are the dominant species, And this again, because you realize the southern part of the park is not fenced, then we have a lot of human-wildlife conflict because the herbivores will move out, and then the lions will follow them out. And I'm sure you've heard about some of the lions found in residential areas. So this is why we went there, and we found that Soranam was actually a big mess, and we mapped it. As also the other one was Parthenium. Parthenium, you realize that the park itself is more in a basin area, and the other areas are actually raised. So we have heavy downpour, if all the fresh floods come into the lake, into the park, and this one brings a lot of Parthenium. You realize in Kenya, the other invasive species which is actually spreading very fast is Parthenium, and this is found uh, around the pathways or the highways because of construction. So we also found these uh, around the access roads of the park. And this was a serious one because it was actually spreading inside the park through the drainages. So we also mapped this and provided some recommendations, especially for osmum immediate removal, because the stage it was almost flowering. So that was the best stage to remove. And again, the park it was during the wet season, so there was no need of cutting. There was some ease in terms of uprooting the invasive. And then again, control routine inspection of construction materials, especially the maram sites or the maram that is coming into the park when doing the routine maintenance of the roads. And then again, we also had Oldonyo Sabuk National Park. Oldonyo Sabuk National Park is actually a very important water tower, and it is actually invaded by Rantana Kamara, and it covers around that 6%. And this one has an impact on the major herbivores, which are the Cape buffaloes. And this one is actually driving them outside the protected area. And this is bringing a lot of human-wildlife conflict. So what do we do after getting that report out? Then our recommendations were institution of an invasive control and monitoring plan, which we realized it was actually there because we used to have it when you were in Kenya Wildlife Service some time back, but then it has to be revisited back. And then start with areas of low invasion, going to areas of high invasion. And then you had to recommend mechanical removal for these areas of the prioritized areas of low invasion. Again, we move to the next one on the chemical control. This is specifically for the Savo. Remember, I showed about Savo, Prosopis, Duriflora, and we are doing a chemical control. This chemical control, we are doing it on a pilot basis. So what you're doing, we are using a hack and squeeze technique, where at the base of every stem of the Prosopis, you hack a bit, and then you using a syringe, you inject it with a milestone. This is a chemical that has been used in Israel and also Europe, and it has been proven to work. And then you apply only very small quantities of the herbicide, and we have seen from the images here, there is within a period of 6 months, the treated stands are actually drying up, and very minimal impact also on the soils and also on other plants that we've seen. So if this proves to work, then we'll upscale it. We're only 6 months into it, and we are monitoring the impact so far. But it is working, as we are seeing from here. And again, now, how to conclude? There is this book by Chinua Achebe. This is just an AI-generated thing, and I've found it a very good way to conclude that since we have gotten these invasive species, and they are part of us due to climate change, and they have emerged, they are with us now. What do? We need to have a collaborative effort as scientists, as managers, as students who are, you are a student today, but tomorrow you will be a scientist or a manager. So we need to put our heads together and have an adaptive management towards the control or management of these invasive species so that we can have sustainable ecosystems to our habitats, our wildlife, not just for now, but even in future. And that is why this bird, which was learned that men had learned to shoot without missing, then it also learned to fly without patching. So we also need to put our heads together and adapt. But this adaptation has to make sure that we manage the invasive species. Find in our case, sometimes most of the cases we normally put a price tag or an economic component on the invasive species. However, is it sustainable? We tried it in Kenya some time back, putting an economic tag on prosopis and tried to generate charcoal out of it. But the area which was actually suggested to control that, which is in Baringo, this thing has gone, the invasion has actually gone out of hand. And this is something that we need to do. What is our role as human beings? What is our role in terms of the spread? It has been said. We normally bring them into even our comfort areas of our homes as ornamentals. In Nairobi, sometimes you walk along the streets, you find somebody, selling a very beautiful flower in a water pot, and you tend to buy it. But what are you buying? You're actually buying a very serious water invasive plant, which is actually killing most of our lakes, especially in Lake Victoria. So, what is our role in terms of the spread? What is our role in terms of the management? And what is our role in future in terms of invasive species control and management? Thank you, and that is the end of my presentation.
Thank you, Peter. That was super interesting. I really appreciated that you showed the comparison between using manual boots on the ground monitoring and then using modern technology to also do monitoring and evaluation of the projects. If you haven't deducted it by now, Peter focused on the role of monitoring in the whole process of control. And yeah, that was really interesting to see the relationship between invasive plants and the ecology and human-wildlife conflict. Really interesting. Peter, there's a question from Peterson from the WTC. What are the regulatory requirements to biological and chemical control of invasive species in Kenya?
Thank you for that question, Peterson, and I've also read it from the chat. And first of all, there is a regulation by the Poisons Board in terms of what you bring into the country. So you have to get clearance before you do any, especially the chemical control. You have to do you have to get some clearances, and then again you also have to get it done within a manageable environment, which is which you are able to regulate or which you have control over. For the biological control, I think this has to be tried and tested before you go into food-borne testing or deploying it. Otherwise, you might encounter what we did for Lake Naivasha, introduction of the Nile patch, and it became a menace instead of being able to control what it was intended to. Maybe I might not have the exact regulatory requirements, but basically it is something which is regulated at some point. And before you do the introduction, you have to go through several clearances. What I know is for the chemical control, which I was involved in, we have to get some clearances, even from the country where the chemical is coming into where it's coming into from and into Kenya. And then you do the management within a pilot environment. That's what I can say for now.
Thank you, Peter. That's a good comprehensive answer. I also want to ask you, you showed the use of remote sensing tools. As the government agency, you have access to these advanced tools and you have the training to use them. If community conservancies would like to access these tools, could they work with you if they need remote sensing products to show what's happening in their protected area? Is it possible for them to work with you to get that information?
Yes, Johan. This is something which we can work together because we are a government institution, and one of our mandate is also training. So whatever technology that we have, we are always happy to share with either private institution or any citizen or anyone who is willing, as long as we have the technology. And this is something that we've also done onto our other, we've also trained our scientists. So we'll be more than willing and happy to partner and see how we can also exchange notes and knowledge on this. However, it is important to note that remote sensing can only work in areas where the invasion is homogeneous based on the spatial resolution for the image that you're using. If you're using Landsat, then it has to be more than 30 by 30. If you're using Sentinel-2, it has to be more than 10 by 10. And I normally prefer, if it is Sentinel-2, it has to be 15 by 15 meters. So that now, at least you're able to get the right training sites. But to answer your question, yes, we'll be more than willing. And you are welcome. Or whoever would be willing, we are more than willing to partner. Thank you.
Wonderful. So that makes it accessible. So there's a generic question from Stuart, and I think we will possibly make that the last question of the afternoon. Given that some invasive species are indigenous but singled out because they have become expansive, should we concentrate on controlling these rather than true aliens? The thinking here that we might have a better chance of success. So it's basically prioritizing where you feel you're actually going to win.
Yes, so it's true. Some of the invasive species are indigenous, whereas others are alien. For instance, I've seen also, let me combine this with a question from Peterson Kariuki, especially on taconandas. Taconandas within the areas where we are working in, especially around Nakuru, Naivasha, is indigenous. It's not that alien, but it has actually colonized the entire landscape. So meaning that it is taking over areas which had even the grasslands, and very few grasses grow actually underneath. So I think it is very important to weigh our options, because if we say that it is not alien, it is indigenous, but then it takes over 100% of the entire habitat, then means that we have to do we have to be proactive in our management and then control it and see. We could not eradicate it completely, but then we need to manage its invasion. So I think that is how I can see, and I think I should maybe I will welcome my colleagues who presented together so to answer to this question. Thank you.
Graham, please go ahead.
Yeah, you've got two different problems that present themselves as the same. Densification of the bush, loss of grazing land, loss of biodiversity. One is caused by exotic species coming in with no natural enemies, that is your invasive alien species. And I would prefer that we try and talk about bush encroachers for the indigenous species. These are indigenous species that we've got bush densification as a result of poor land management. These trees might be invasive in another country, but I'd say bush encroachment in their homeland, and their management they cause the problem because of overgrazing, lack of fire, too much fire, or a combination of those. So to manage bush encroachers, the indigenous ones, you need to manage your grazing and your fire regimes. To manage invasive alien species, your fire regimes and your grazing is not going to impact them. There you have to use chemical, biological, or other methods to control those species.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, Graham. Yeah, it's all about prioritization and how you do that. So there's a question. I said we're going to end with that, but Peterson mentioned here, could we include orange-leaved croton as an invasive species, especially in the Masai Mara ecosystems? So who decides when is it officially a invasive species? Peter, can you maybe comment on that?
Yes, I've noted the invasion. I've noted with concern the croton species Peterson is talking about, and it is actually spreading very fast. And you find that it is not classified as an invasive species; it's an indigenous species. However, I think this comes into the management aspect. We come together. Fine, it is not an invasive species, yes, but what is it doing to our landscape? The same question that has been raised here about Taconandas. What is the impact that is bringing to the landscape? It is actually almost eradicating all other indigenous species, especially the grasses. And we know Masai Mara is more of a savanna grassland. So, and what will be the impact if we allow this? So, at some point, we need to have serious discussions as managers who have experienced the 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 previous Masai Mara or the previous grasslands. What is it's doing onto the ecosystem right now, and in future, if we allow it to continue spreading like this. So I think this is I don't have a straight answer to it, but it's something which we could think about in terms of managers and see how we can, do we need to have an intervention into this? Thank you.
Thank you, Peter. Yeah, it's a key question that you are putting in there is what does it do to the landscape? So yeah, thank you for entering that approach to it.